Welcome to CEOs Solve the Darndest Things, a video and podcast series of interviews with CEOs, hosted by the partners of the Resolve firm.
Hello, welcome to CEOs Solve the Darndest Things. I'm Sharon Fruits, and today's guest is Gabrielle Mills. Gabrielle is the owner and co-founder of Sourced, and Sourced is a multi-award winning company that handles back office support services. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Tell the listeners a little bit about the services that are included with your business. And I think I'm also going to have to ask you to tell us about that national award you won.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd love to tell you about it. So my company is called Sourced, as you mentioned, and we are a back office support solutions company. And what that means is we have smushed 4 businesses under one umbrella so we can provide a whole suite of services to our clients who are small to medium-sized business owners. We learned before we started the company that you don't always need a full staff. If you do, you don't always need them to be full-time. Sometimes people just can't afford it, or they just don't need it. So we wanted to come up with a creative solution to getting somebody a back office in the way that they needed, but everything was fractional, a la carte, custom, based on what their business needs. So the 4 businesses that we smushed together are content marketing, bookkeeping and accounting, administrative support, and placement services, which otherwise can be known as talent acquisition. So like I said, everything we do is fractional, and we can operate many different types of ways to serve anybody in any industry, get the back office support that they need.
That is great. Well, tell everyone how you got into the business and what is the most exciting part of coming to work.
So it's actually funny because my mom and I started the business together. I came to her when I was 21, and I told her I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and she told me that she had this lifelong secret of wanting to be an entrepreneur as well. And we decided to do it together, and it took us about 6 or 7 years to get to what it was that we were going to do. It took us, we looked at different franchises, and we had to come to the conclusion that we wanted to do B2B. And we stumbled into the idea of Sourced and jumped 2 feet first. And at the time, we did not know that we were starting 4 businesses at the same time, but we got smart over the last few years, and that's essentially what we did. But it's really great. It's a wonderful business. We get to help lots of different types of people. And it's really fun to work with my mom. Her name's Chrissy, by the way. And to answer your question about what gets me and her out of bed in the morning is really the vision in which we decided to start our company. So we are type A drivers. We have big dreams. We encourage people to have big dreams and take big risks in their life. And we held ourselves to no different standard. We have really big dreams for this company. We want to make it a national company. We want to be in all 50 states and serve as many small to medium-sized businesses as we can. We want to be the only resource that people think about when they are looking for back office support services. So that bigger dream is what really excites us, because every day we get a little bit closer to it, either by failure or by success, figuring it out along the way. And it's been really great to see how our business has evolved in the last few years to get us closer to that. And we're always having conversations of like, how are we going to start expanding? Are we ready to start expanding? You can tell I just love that stuff about my business, and I can see where we're going. But probably the other part of that answer, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, is watching my team grow with me. There's been so many people that came into our organization and just had very little functions that have really leaned in and become a cornerstone to our clients, the way that we operate, how we strategize in our business, that some have been promoted to leadership. Some people have raised their hand and say, I want to help you guys expand. If you franchise, I want to help the franchises. I want to help you sell different locations. So been really cool to see somebody who came in as a bookkeeper or an office assistant raise their hand to be like, I want to be a part of the bigger vision of this company. And it's fun and very exciting to watch.
I can even see the excitement in your face telling the
Yeah,
story.
it's fun.
That's
It's
great.
fun. Not all the days are good.
Well,
I'm sure we'll get to that, but
that's how it goes with
you gotta find the joy when you
That's
can.
right. Well, give us a quick soundbite on the award you won last year.
Oh yeah, so that we have been very fortunate to have won, I think 6 or 7 awards. Most of them are local, but the local ones are in best employer categories, which I just believe is like phenomenal recognition. Just to say that we're a best employer in our community is something that I could not have dreamed of, and it was wonderful. The national award that we received is we are a top 100 small business in the country. I can't tell you how that happened. Like it was one of the best days in our business. We got notified that we were selected as in a small business 100 category, and we had a nice little celebration.
Well, that's great. That's great. We're proud of you for that.
Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about some of the conundrums that you have faced and what you did to solve them, that hopefully some of the listeners can learn from your experience.
Yeah. So there's so many. There's so many. And I tell as many entrepreneurs as I can, especially new entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, that the only way you get successful in this space in entrepreneurship is through a lot of failure. So you have to get comfortable with failure and learn that it's your best friend at the end of the day. And when I think about my biggest conundrums in business, I really think about the year 2019. It was a dumpster fire. Like looking back, it wasn't nearly as bad as I had perceived it to be, but it was a lot of issues that happened all at once, which was a blessing because it shined a light on all of the things that we thought were fine, but they had little cracks that we didn't know about. We just happened to find all the cracks at once, which was a massive headache and a lot of learning from me. But the biggest lesson that came out of the year was the importance of setting good processes and procedures. We knew this. We had set processes and procedures well before we opened our doors, but what we had failed to do is stick with them. So consistency is something that it's a skill I'm always trying to work on. And while we would have conversations about, we need to have a process, we need to follow the process, we need to continue to tweak the process, we would just get busy and other things would come in the way and we would prioritize. And we got into a habit of, as all businesses do when they first start, you just do what you got to do. If it comes at you, you fix the problem, you go and you do it. We had to learn the skill of slowing down and making sure that the process that we had in place was correct. And if it wasn't, course correcting and then following through. So that's like 3 parts of how processes and setting them are really important. And they all kind of came to a head for our business at the same time. So we learned all in the same setting that we had outgrown our previous processes and we just had never revisited them. So we needed to redo them in a short amount of time so we could continue to serve and provide the quality that we want to, and then reinforce them with our team and build that consistency. And what made last year so difficult is that we were doing that all at once, but it is really the most critical part of a business, in my opinion. It sounds boring. I like setting processes. I am terrible at following through with them. My team laughs at me because I'll give them a process, but I won't actually follow it. It's just,
hopefully they're holding you accountable for that part of it, though.
Yeah, it's the secret sauce.
Yeah, you are right, though. And I think it's one of the things we tell our CEOs is very important to work on the business as much as you work in the business. So you have to set aside that time. And it's easy not to do that. So that's a good learning for everyone to make sure that you're allocating that time.
And I think I got confused of what working on and in really meant. Because when you're in the weeds of running your business, everything's important. So you can make excuses, reason with yourself
Right.
on what is on the business and what is in the business. And I found myself doing that a lot. So me solving a client problem was definitely in the business, but I'm like, but if I look at it at a high level, we're working on the business, quote unquote, but I really wasn't. Like, we were still missing the foundations and the big pillars of what was going to take our business forward, which was the processes and following through and getting our
Right.
team on board and keeping them accountable.
Right. Is there another conundrum that you would share that you have faced, maybe something recent that has been a challenge that you could share briefly with us?
Yes, I mean, recently there has been a pandemic, so there's been a lot of conundrums that I was not ready to experience. I don't know if anybody was quite ready to experience them, but I certainly wasn't on
I don't
necessarily
think
thinking a
anybody
pandemic
was ready
was
for
coming.
it.
So I would say that my main conundrum is similar to what a lot of people had experienced, which is, how do you drive sales? How do you continue to maintain your existing customer base and then drive new sales? How do you do that when people aren't networking, people aren't going out, people are strapped for cash? How do you maintain status quo and then some to hit your numbers? So for me, when I strip everything away, pandemic or not, just in life, for me and for Chrissy and the way that we run our company, it is all about maintaining and building quality, genuine, authentic relationships. And we let our relationships drive our business 100%. It is a thread from sales all the way down into delivery, regardless of what it is that we do. And I have found that when the going gets tough, i.e. a pandemic, those relationships that we spent time cultivating and building and nurturing for years, or even just months, really came back and they served us, because people remembered us. People still wanted to do business with us, for the ones that could do business with us, or even just open the door for conversations of how could we work together when I'm ready, because they knew my messages about we're here to help, we're here to serve, were not as a result of a pandemic. They were little breadcrumbs that we left all along the way for years and years and years.
I think
and
that is
when they needed it, we were there.
that is a good lesson. And like you said, it's something you'd worked on all along. You can't just start doing that type of work when you
Right.
need it. You have to build those relationships over time.
Yeah.
So very, very good advice. Okay, well, let's switch gears just a little bit and tell me about a conundrum that your customers face that you help solve.
So that's an interesting one, because like I said, we have 4 entities that we essentially run separately. They're not separate for our clients, but we have different processes and procedures for each one of them. How many times am I going to say the word processes and procedures on this conversation? But I think overarching, the conundrum that we are seeing most is the world and the workforce is at a crossroads right now. We can either continue to work in a traditional way, i.e. commuting, going into work, doing the job, having a full-time 40-hour-a-week gig, going home, doing it all over the next day. Or businesses can explore more innovative options for getting the talent that they need. That could be fractional support, that can be testing out employees before they actually hire them on full time. That's having a blend, or using somebody like us, which is like a literal outsourced entire team of people. So I think businesses have an interesting, and the workforce really, they both have to work hand in hand, have an interesting decision to make of, do I want to have a traditional style method of employment, or do I want to explore more innovative solutions? And that could include remote working, but it also just includes having the talent and how you work with the talent. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I'm seeing, is helping people make those decisions of, how do I want to build my team?
Right. I think, and you touched on also that it's really across the industry that topic is hitting. So what advice would you give your customers in your industry on tackling that?
So my first piece of advice would be keep an open mind. So whenever I am reaching out to help people, sometimes people know exactly what they want and they're actually right. And not to insinuate that they're like, my clients don't know their own businesses, because they do. But a lot of times when we go into conversations, I'm asking them lots of different questions of like, have you considered doing it in this way? Or what would happen if we broke this role into two different people who are skilled in each two different segments? Or I don't think this role is full-time. Have you considered not having this role be a full-time job and exploring a fractional option, and really going through all of the different ways you could come at serving that business need that does not always equal one full-time employee? That can very often be the answer, as one traditional full-time employee. But in my world, we see a lot of companies that can benefit from these innovative, creative ways of getting great talent that don't look like they have in the past. And they end up saving money, getting better talent, having more flexibility to run their company. And it's a better fit. They just had never considered it before. So my only recommendation would be to, when you're up against hiring, really stop for a minute, even though it's really hard because you're busy, to consider all your options and keep an open mind, because it might be a really good fit for you.
I think that's an excellent point. And sometimes having someone from the outside come in and look at it with you can give you some options you never even thought about. So I think that is a very important piece of advice.
Thank you.
Any last parting thoughts you would give to entrepreneurs that are listening today?
Parting thoughts.
Check your processes.
Do I?
Check your processes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, if you get nothing else from this conversation, processes. But here's the thing, Sharon, you have to follow through on them, because that was my big thing of, it's good to have a process, but you actually have to, you can't just like set it and forget it. It's not one of those things. You really have to nurture it and hold your team accountable to it. And I'll leave everybody with this piece of unsolicited advice. You have to get your team on board with the why. If you set a process and you understand why you've set that and you've strategized that, but you can't get your team on board with why you're doing it and why it's important and why it's important to them specifically, it's not going to hold its water. So that's something that also needs to be considered. So definitely set the why. But if I can PSA and tell people, focus on building really good quality relationships with no strings attached, no sales agenda, no nothing, just build good relationships. Business will always come from that, always.
That's great advice. That is definitely great advice. And on the processes, you're spot on, where you have to involve your employees. And after you've used the processes for a while, engage them in upgrading them, because as things, have been worked on for a while, you have new learnings, sometimes they're shortcuts, sometimes they're better ways of doing it. So it can be an evergreen process if you engage your employees at,
totally.
every
and
step
I feel
of the process.
like if you don't, you're actually doing yourself a huge disservice, because first of all, nobody likes the boss to like just throw down the hammer and say, this is the way I want it to be done. And they haven't taken the time to understand what goes into the job and all the stuff, all the moving parts. So it's just an ignorant decision to do that without having your team be a part of it, because you are 100% missing things that could be captured by having their insight. But to your point, it brings them in on the why, and brings them in on building your company, and brings them in on the vision of where you want to go, in a way that just throwing them a process is not going to do.
Very true. Very true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was wonderful to hear your tips and celebrate your awards with you. So thank you again.